Good morning, everyone. We're getting close to Shabbos, and this Shabbos we have the Parsha of Chaye Sarah. Chaye Sarah, we'll learn right in the beginning about the life of Sarah. And the Torah begins that Sarah lived 127 years, Mea Shana, Esrim Shana, Sheva Shanim, and then the Pasuk concludes, Shnei Chaye Sarah. This was the life of Sarah. Comes Rashi and tells us, what is the Torah? Repeat again, this was the life of Sarah. So Rashi says something very beautiful, that all her life was a beautiful life. Every year of her life was beautiful. And this comes a big question. We know, if anybody learned the history of Sarah, she had a lot of aggravations in her life, a lot of stories. She was captured by Pharaoh, she was captured by Avimelech. She didn't have kids for a long time. Many things were going on, not so much in a positive. How could we say that all her life was beautiful? All her life was so nice. But it does say that all her life was a beautiful life. How does it go together? And the explanation isn't short. When you're talking about life, there's two ways how to see it. There's two perspectives in life. There's life the way we see life as people like us. Life means what we see every day, what we live every day. And therefore, if there's a problem, suddenly life is not so good. In order to be good, it's got to be a beautiful life. Sarah, she was a spiritual woman, very righteous lady. To her, what was life? Life was, what could she accomplish for God? Life is, what could she do good to the world? And that was called for her life. And this is what it means that her whole life was beautiful. Because her whole life, since day one until the last day, was how to bring people to God. How to make the world a better place to be in. That was her life. A person, his entire life is a spiritual life, like Sarah, can't be any bad. It's all good. It's all beautiful. It's all nice. Because every moment, on every second, he can do something else good to bring God closer to the world, and to bring the world closer to God. But to do that, and to make this, that this should be your life, to make this, that this should be your simcha, your joy, you gotta live a spiritual life. Like Sarah lived a spiritual life. And when you're able to live a life like that, you only see good. You only see that everything is beautiful, that everything is nice. Because beautiful and nice to a spiritual person is the revelation of God to the world, that the world becomes a better world. To do this, we always say, you gotta learn lots of Chassidus. You gotta go into the depth. And then only you can start living a life like this. A life that the focus and the joy and the simcha is about the spiritual life. Everything else doesn't matter. And then you become a happy person your entire life, as Sarah did. She was happy. All life was a life of simcha, a life of joy. You gotta be a great chassid for that one. I heard a story from one of my rabbis when I was in yeshiva many years ago. I was 14 years old at that time. But this rabbi told us a story. I don't know if the rabbi is alive. I hope he is. I didn't see him for many years. But he was our rabbi for quite a few years. And we lived in Yerushalayim at that time. And he told us a story about a certain particular fellow that lived in Mea Sha'arim, that he became a Chabad Chassid. And he once spoke to him and he asked him, how did you become Chabad? What does Chabad have to do with you? You're like a Polish Jew. You had your ways. How did you join Chabad? So he told him this most phenomenal story that happened with himself. The story goes that this fellow was in Warsaw in World War II. And he was a part of the uprising in the ghetto Warsaw, as we know the history. Very hard time for Jews at that time. But he was a part of this, not only of the depression moments, of the uprising times, fighting the Germans. And as we know the story, as he says the story, the Germans were burning one house after another to capture us. We didn't live in the houses those days. We lived in bunkers underground. And when they burned one house down, we would run to the other house not to be captured by them. Because captured by them, we would stand. And it was one day for me. I was fighting with the Germans, and they put the whole house, they bombed the house, and they put it on fire, and we couldn't stay in that bunker anymore. And I had no choice. I had to run somewhere else, underground, to another bunker. But as I was running for my life, in middle of running, in middle of the fire, in middle of this old big war situation, I hear such sweet melody, with crying, with singing. And I was like shocked. Where did that come from in this moment? And in the same time that I was running for my life, running to be safe, I couldn't hold myself. I had to see where that is. And I turned to that bunker where I hear this melody. And guess what, he says? I turned to that bunker and I watched the scenery. I saw this chassid sitting on a table, on a chair, I don't remember the details, with his talis and his tefillin. And he was davening to Hashem. And he was davening with such a sweet melody. And I was like looking at him. The world looks like it's coming to an end. Everybody became animals running one after another. And this one man, this one Jew, this one chassid, there's no world for him, is singing and praying to God like there's nobody else around. It's only him and God. And he's having the moments of his life. I couldn't run. I was just waiting for a long second, just staring at that person, looking, how could such a thing be? And then I saw there's another life. It continues the story, says, I didn't wait it too long. Suddenly it came back to me, I kept on running. But that vision, that moment stayed in my whole life, stayed in my head. There is another life. There's a life to be with God. And that's a life of simcha, a life of joy. And it says, this is why I became Chabad after. I want to join that life. This is what we're striving to. This is what Sarah was. Sarah Imenu. A woman full of life of simcha, full of life of joy. Because her life is to be connected to the one above. Every yourself all a good Shabbos.